Program, sir.
Thanks for having me. Good morning, viewer.
All right, let's begin with our brothers and sisters in Ondo State.
Yes.
It's been a long-drawn battle. It's been a long-drawn battle that actually started from the circumstances that led to the death of the former governor of Ondo State, sadly, Rotimi Akeredolu. When he was sick, proceeded on leave, went to the hospital outside the country. There was so much talk about him not transferring power to his deputy as the constitution mandates, and we all know why. This is not the first time we've been there from President Aiyedatiwa. We can go on and on and give examples. Right. There's always this fear of the deputy, yes, wielding that power in your absence, especially by your loyalists who feel as though this is going to take food off their table and all of that. Well, nobody can stop the hand of nature, yes. And so Akeredolu is gone. But that fight remains. They fought so dirty. It got to a point, Mr. President had to wait in, invited the different factions to Abuja, and they signed some kind of peace pact. Yes. But then Akeredolu came back, couldn't stay in the state, governed the state from Ibadan. They said he was fit and all. Now he's dead. Now it's time for APC to have, its primaries. And that's that old wind start up. Well, to cut the long story short, Aiyedatiwa has been declared winner of that election. But so much controversy. What do you think about it?
That's typical. You understand? I wouldn't say it's unexpected. Yeah. You understand? Because this is a critical challenge in our party democracy. That's what we have always seen. And one begins to think that, we've gotten to a point where we should have learned from everything that has been happening in the past concerning, especially where it has to do with primaries. I was reading an analysis where the INEC chief, Mahmoud, was saying something that they've taken time to study all the judgments, post-election judgments, and they found out that a huge percentage of the issues and challenges actually came from, the primaries. You understand, where you have to, take out somebody that's, purportedly won an election and all that. That it came from primaries. And if we have been practicing democracy since 1999, and up till now, we've not been able to sort ourselves where it has to do with simple primaries. You understand? It begins to, bother people, especially, people who care so much about because if you call it primaries, that's primary elections, you try to make everything very transparent and fair, in such a way as to bring out who the best is. But if you have some people in mind already, why call it primary elections? Just call it appointments and get the people you want and other, because now it's taking its toll on the economy of Ondo State. There's controversies, there's crises, there's riots everywhere, and it's a whole lot of challenge. So the big parties, should ideally sit down and if the primaries thing is not working, they fashion out another means and ways of bringing out who they are representing. Should be. Based on what we are seeing in Ondo, it clearly shows that we have not learned anything where it has to do with primaries, because the same stories, from state to state, in Edo State it happened, in Ondo State it's happening now, and there appears to be no end, to this kind of issues. So something really has to happen. Something really has to happen, because I will tell you something. When you have this kind of crisis, eventually you get to the election. When that man wins, the other party goes to court. They go to court. Eventually, when that man is taken out, INEC is going to spend sometimes some budgeted funds to be able to carry out a rerun elections or carry out another election totally, to ensure they, putting somebody there. So it's a whole lot of problem. We are losing on so many fronts, and something really has to be done. We have not learned, and we need to begin to put our hands in order where it has to do with primaries.
Something really needs to be done. My take on this might sound somehow, but really looking at the kind of democracy we run, I think just one thing is missing, and that is good men and women just accepting the reality that confronts all of us, that they need to go into politics. Because when you look at how our parties are run, it's getting worse by the day.
Correct.
When you look at, I don't want to use that word characters, but then when you look at the characters who are operating today, the fear I have is when I look at their aides.
Yes.
And their aides really tell you the next generation politicians, then we really have a lot to fear. Because the only stock in trade of this next, the people they are grooming, is violence, violence, and violence. And somebody who comes through the ranks, through that, you know, organizing all this kind of protests, you know, because when you listen to the kind of names that we are calling Governor Ododo, who was the chairman of the APC, when you hear the kind of names we are calling, if we hear the kind of names that we are calling, and these are supposed to be party members, if we are calling the governor of the state, then you really fear if this kind of people are those who are involved in politics. Because when they talk about members of the parties, it is these people. When they talk about our youth wing, it is these people. I think what is missing is to find decent men and decent women who have made their money, you know, who have made their money in other endeavors, you know, really going in to the wards, populating these parties. Because we run a kind of politics where if you have money and, you know, you've made money and you guys are in good numbers and you have the same interest at heart, that is to fix the country, fix your local government, fix your state, we can't go wrong. But continuously, what seems to happen is we tend to be on this side, right? We tend to be on this side, asking for these guys to reform their ways, when clearly we've seen it that these guys, they lack the capacity.
You see, it brings me to a certain critical issue. You understand? When we begin to talk about politics being a dirty game, you know, so many people argue that. But you know, based on what you just said, you begin to, you know, think that there appears to be some sense, you know, in such statements, you know, because people who are busy, people who have made their money, like you said, you know, don't want to be tainted. They don't want to get in there because they see it as an area where, you know, decent men and women, you know, shouldn't get in, you know, because of, you know, it's beginning to appear like people who don't have any other endeavor, people who are hopeless, you know, which makes me sometimes begin to think that this may actually be economic. Take our local markets, for instance. You have executives there. You know, somebody is the chairman. When it begins to get to the point where the person should, based on their constitution, you know, they bring up some kind of confusion to make it impossible for them to leave. They either want to elongate, they either want to, you know, call in the government to bring up a transition committee just so they don't leave the office. You know, because they have worked out a kind of mechanism where if you are the chairman of Road Transport Union, for instance, on a daily basis, 1 million, 2 million comes into your coffers based on the monies you collect from transporters and all that. You don't want to leave. So you see people who may actually be touts, hoodlums, people who don't really never do well in the society. Those are the people who have time to fight. Those are the people who have time to go to any length to ensure they take out opponents and all that. So you have decent men and women who have taken that backseat. They don't want to get in there because they don't want to be tainted. But based on what you said, we can't continue to live like this. Something has to happen. And that still takes us back to what you said, the point you make, which is decent men and women insisting that they just have to be, if you want to reform the society. Unless that is done, then we will just keep going in circles and frustration begins to set in.
I completely agree with you. All right, quickly, the next one also is our very, very good friends